Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a great pleasure to be here at the Pan IIT Global Conference in Kolkata in 2012. And it's really wonderful to see how all of you have come together here. Today, I thought I'll speak about a topic that all of us, I think, can relate to is how can we use technology for transformation, and specifically, how can we use technology for transforming India, which I think we all agree is really what we are here for. As you know, I had a 30-year career in the private sector, but sometime in 2009, I was invited by the Prime Minister to head this new body called the Unique Identification Authority of India, which is tasked with giving a unique ID number to 1.2 billion residents of India. So the problem statement is very simple: give a unique ID to 1.2 billion residents of India. And this project has come about for a number of reasons. The first reason is that you can think of it as the world's largest social inclusion project. And the reason for that is there are still many, many Indian residents who don't have any formal identity by the state. They don't have a birth certificate, they don't have a school certificate, they don't have anything to prove who they are. And that becomes a huge challenge in a modern society where you're traveling, when you're migrating. If you can't even give your own ID to get a particular service, then you get left out. And therefore, if you're going to bring the entire population of the country into the mainstream, you need to start by giving them an identity. And then there are people who have an ID, but it's part of a group ID. So they are part of some family group like the ration card, and they don't have an individual ID, or they have an ID which is at the state level or whatever. So the challenge was really how do we bring all these people into the formal economy, into the formal society with an identity. So that was one big reason for this project as the world's largest social inclusion project. The other reason for that is in the last 10 years, India is building a modern welfare state. It's investing more and more of its resources in healthcare, in education, in job guarantees, in pensions, and in all kinds of social programs. And increasingly, that as well as it is subsidizing a lot of very important commodities, food, fuel, fertilizer. And the country is spending a lot of money on these things. And all these things, whether they are entitlements or whether they're subsidies, are meant to go to individuals. But when we go down to make sure it gets to the individuals, because there is no formal system of identifying individuals, there is leakage, there is wastage, there is diversion, there are ghosts and duplicates in every database, and therefore the money that is being spent could be organized better. So these are two big reasons. One, to allow people to become formal members of the economy and society and participate. And the second is to make government expenditure, whether it's entitlements or subsidies, more efficient, more effective, and more equitable. And there's a third big reason, which has a lot of has been in the news nowadays, is how do we tackle the problem of corruption for the common man? Because most of the corruption that happens is at the retail point when somebody goes to get his ration or to get his pension or whatever. And therefore, is there a way that we can use technology to make it much easier for people to get the services? So this is driven, therefore, by three major goals: social inclusion, fiscal effectiveness, and reduction of harassment. Now, when we looked at the project, we said here we are in 2009, 2010. Is there a different way to look at how we do this? Because if you look at the West, the United States introduced the Social Security number in 1935-36 before computers. The Swedish introduced the PIN number in 1947. The British introduced the insurance number in 1953. So all these countries issued their ID systems before we really had the power of modern technology. So when you're designing a system in the 21st century, we said, how do we do this very differently? And we decided that it's not sufficient that we give people an ID. Let's give them an online ID. And therefore, this is really the world's first digital ID system that any country is building. And the reason why we said we should have an online ID is that increasingly, as more and more services are delivered over the internet, over a smartphone, over a tablet, over a PC, and those services are delivered remotely over these networks at different points of service, fundamentally verifying the identity of the beneficiary or the person to whom you are providing the service becomes very, very critical. And therefore, we said if we're going to build an ID system in the 21st century, let's build it using an online ID framework. So the very important part of this design is that it's an online ID. And therefore, you can think of this as an act of leapfrogging, where people who don't have an ID are going from no ID to an online ID. In other words, it's like people who didn't have a phone going from no phone to a mobile phone. Therefore, the point is that today's technology in a country where we don't have some feature can be built in a way that you leapfrog over how these things have been solved elsewhere. The other important thing is that we use the technology of biometrics. Again, biometric technology has gained prominence in the last 10 years after 9/11, essentially for surveillance and security reasons. This is the first use of biometrics at a large scale for a development purpose, so that we can deliver better services and goods to people. And the way we use the biometrics is essentially twofold. One, we use biometrics to establish the uniqueness of the individual, so that the individual is entitled to and gets only one ID number. And the second reason is the digital ID that you get. If you need to verify your identity online, then we use the biometrics online to verify your identity. So the two roles, to give you a unique ID and to verify your identity online. For this purpose, we did a lot of research because the world's largest biometric database is about 120 million people in it. And we were planning to build one that was 10 times larger at 1.2 billion. So obviously, we were going into areas of technology and systems that had not been done anywhere else. So we had to make sure that we took all the right decisions. So a lot of R&D and talking to the world's experts and so forth, we came to the conclusion that what we need for establishing uniqueness biometrically over 1 billion people is all the 10 fingerprints of their hands and the iris of both the eyes. And this, using two different features, fingers and the eyes, is called multimodal biometrics. You use two different capabilities. And we came to the conclusion that if you combine all the 10 fingerprints and the eyes and get the digital signature of all these things, and you put them as one sort of data stream, then no two people will have the same pattern. And that's how we establish uniqueness. Now, uniqueness means that you get only one number. But we had to build a system where we were able to enroll anywhere. We had to enroll people who didn't have maybe a ID before that. You had to assume that people would try to enroll multiple times to get different IDs. And therefore, we had to build a platform which used technology to make sure that a person got only one ID. So how did we do that? So we built essentially one of the world's largest computing infrastructure to do what is called as deduplication. That is, go through the entire database and see if this person already exists in your database or not. So what we do is, today our database is about 220 million people already have the numbers issued by us. Let's say that tomorrow the database is got 500 million people or 50 crore people. And let's say the typical enrollment in any given day is 1 million new people enter the system across the country. Each of the 1 million new people entering the system have supplied the biometrics, the 10 fingers and the iris patterns. Each of those 1 million people's biometrics has to be compared against all 500 million that we have to see whether that biometric pattern exists in our database or not. If we find that the biometric pattern exists, then we reject that, saying this is a duplicate. On the other hand, if we find that this is a unique pattern, then we add it to the database and give them a number. And we do that for 1 million new people. So imagine the computational intensity of taking 1 million new records and deduplicating them against 500 million existing records. And we have to do this entire processing in less than 1 day, because next day we'll get another 1 million new people are going to land up. And therefore, we had to build a massive infrastructure. We had to actually build it with 3 different biometric deduplication engines so that we divide up the load between the 3 of them so that one gets 50%, one gets 30%, one gets 20%. And we had to build the architecture using an internet class architecture so that you can keep scaling it up as the transactions came in. So this was built in 14 months, and in this system now, we have enrolled 27 crore people, which is 270 million people, and we have issued numbers for 220 million people. And by sometime next year, we'll cross 400 million people enrolled, and by sometime in 2014, we'll cross 600 million people enrolled. That means 1 out of every 3 Indians by next year, and 1 out of every 2 Indian residents by 2014. So it's really out there, enrolling people at a very rapid pace. Now, once we enroll and we do the deduplication, we essentially and establish that it is unique, then we issue a number. The number that is issued is a 12-digit random number. And the reason why it's a random number is we don't want anything about you to be known by seeing your number. Now, this again, we looked at global numberings, like, for example, the SSN in the US. By looking at the number and knowing where you are from, you can actually sort of figure out some parts of the number. Similarly, in Scandinavia, in Sweden or Finland and all that, your personal ID number has your date of birth, which means if I know your date of birth, I can figure out 6 digits of your number, and if I know your number, I can figure out your date of birth. Now, therefore, once you start using intelligence in the number, then you're actually giving away something. And therefore, we had to make it a completely random number, and the random number algorithm and details are on our website. So this 12-digit number is generated, and we send a letter to the person with the number. So far, the person has got a letter or a small card with a number. But what do you do with this number? The most important thing is that this number, being a digital ID, can be verified online. What that means is that you go to a particular location to get some service, and the person delivering that service wants to establish that you're the person you claim to be. They can then ask you to give your number, your name, and your fingerprint or something like that, and they will make an online request to our database and will come back in a few seconds saying, yes, this is the person he claims to be, or no, this is not the person he claims to be. This process is called as authentication. Now, we all know about authentication. When you go to withdraw money from your ATM, you take your debit card and your PIN, you swipe your debit card, you enter your PIN, and you withdraw money from the ATM, because that task of giving the PIN and the debit card tells the bank that this is really the same person, because I know this person has this PIN and this debit card sent to him. The debit card, which you swipe, is a kind of authentication of what you possess or what you have. So the fact that you possess that debit card says that this is probably the person that we sent it to whom to. The PIN is an example of a what you know kind of an authentication. That is, you know some password or something, and therefore the system says, since this password was given only to this person, I know who the person is. I mean, when you log on to your email, you use a password. That's how they let you look at your mail. So this debit card is a what you have kind of a authentication factor, and a PIN is a what you know kind of an authentication factor. What biometrics does, it gives you a third type of authentication, because it authenticates who you are. And that again becomes an authentication, and in some sense that's the most secure one, because only you can use your finger, nobody else can use your finger. And therefore it allows you to build all kinds of systems where you have biometric authentication. So we provide biometric authentication. We provide it using the fingerprint. You just put your finger on a fingerprint reader and we check online and confirm that you're the same person. And we have now, in the next few months, we are launching an iris-based authentication. So somebody will have a small camera, look at your eye, and will confirm it that you're the same person, something like how they do it at the airports. So this authentication is an online authentication which has been designed as an open architecture. What that means is that this authentication can be used in any application. And that open architecture is the basis on which we expect a large number of applications to be developed in the future, first by government and then finally, or later by the private sector, which give all kinds of benefits to people. Now, the first example of that application is what we are doing in the banking sector, where the government, as you know, recently launched a program for direct cash transfers. And the idea is that you can, along with your ID system, you can attach a bank account to it. And since the ID is unique, I can use the ID system to send money to you. So let's say that you have a bank account in the State Bank of India. You can, somewhere on the cloud, you can connect your bank account to your ID number. So let's say your ID number is 123 and your bank is SBI. Somewhere on the cloud, it says ID number 123 is connected to SBI. Once you establish that connection somewhere on the cloud, then anyone can send money using only your ID number. So if somebody wants to send money to me, he says send rupees 500 to ID number 123, and automatically ID number 123 maps to the bank in turn maps to your bank account. And this ability to use, and because the ID is unique, you know for sure that it will go only to this person and to his bank account. So the way that we use it in the cash transfer is, in the first instance, we use the ID number system to remove ghosts and duplicates from various entitlement databases. Let's say that you have a database of PDS beneficiaries who are entitled to get rice or wheat, and let's say you have 100,000 beneficiaries in your database. Once you get the ID numbers for all 100,000, you actually find that there are only 80,000 of them, because 20,000 are duplicates or don't exist or whatever. So the first benefit is you use the ID for deduplication that removes ghosts, duplicates, and wastage. And that in itself pays for this whole thing, because it makes the beneficiary database of various systems, be it pensions, be it scholarships, be it NREGA workers, be it food, makes it more efficient and eliminates ghosts and duplicates. The second is, because that ID is linked to a bank account, once you want to send the person the money, let's say it's a pension, then the same list of beneficiaries, you just send money to the ID. That eliminates fraud, because the ID system points to the bank, so the money goes straight into your bank account. So the second value of this is that it acts as a financial address. The other thing is that the ID is also a KYC, or Know Your Customer. Know Your Customer, as you know, is a requirement under the Indian Prevention of Money Laundering Act for regulators like the RBI and SEBI to check the identity of a person before they're allowed to open a bank account or buy a mutual fund. So in the role of the Aadhaar number as a KYC, it makes you open a bank account. So it makes your bank account opening much simpler. And then finally, using the online authentication feature we talked about, we have devised a device called the Micro ATM, which can be in any branch or in a BC or any location, where a person can go, put his finger on the machine, authenticate himself, and then get some money out of his bank account. And therefore, you can create a sort of a network of low-cost ATMs in some sense, because these micro ATMs are actually manned by a person. And that's how we're going to take the banking to the people. And therefore, in the direct cash transfer system, it's very simple. At one end, the government gives money to an ID number. At this end, the person uses ID number to take his money out. And because the taking out of the money with the ID is authenticating you, you can make sure it goes to the right person. And therefore, fundamentally, the big challenge of public delivery, which is how do we make sure there's no wastage? How do we make sure that our public benefits go to the right people? How do we make sure that only that person withdraws his money and nobody else? All these challenges have been fixed using technology. And I think that's what is the thing in India, is that we have the opportunity to use the world's most sophisticated technology, the most modern technology, to solve the most basic of the challenges that we have. And we hope that once we do cash transfers, which demonstrates the value of the ID in a financial world, other people will also start using this ID for other applications. For example, we use the same ID for the PDS reforms. PDS, as you know, is the public distribution system. India has 500,000 shops where people buy subsidized rice, wheat, kerosene, sugar. And there again, all the reports indicate a lot of leakage and wastage. And we intend to use the Aadhaar authentication to make sure that the PDS entitlements go to the right people. We are right now doing a project in Andhra Pradesh. The Andhra Pradesh government is rolled out an Aadhaar online PDS linkage in East Godavari district and Hyderabad city. And already they are seeing the benefits of this whole thing, where people are able to just go to the shop, put their finger, take their rice and go home. And it makes very sure that only the people, the genuine people, get the thing. So I've explained to you, one is how the ID is giving people access to services. With an ID, I can get access to my money. I can open a bank account. So for people who don't have ID or people who have a paper-based ID, this online ID becomes a gateway to the future. So that's one benefit. Second, the ID is used to improve government expenditure. I explained how by using ID to deduplicate, you can remove ghosts and duplicates. And then by using the ID as a financial address, I can put money in your account. And then by using the ID as authentication, I can make sure only you withdraw your money. And then the final thing I'll talk about is the whole issue of corruption and harassment. Now, one of the reasons that public services are inequitable for the poor is they have no choice as to where they can get those public services. They can, for the middle class, for those who have access to markets, think of life before 91. You could only buy one car, you could only buy one scooter, you could only buy one brand of phones, you could only fly on one airline. You didn't have choice. What markets did for the middle class and those people who had purchasing power was it gave them choice. Now you can buy your mobile phone from any company, you can fly on any airline, you can buy any model of car. You got freedom, right? Markets gave you that choice. But in the area of public services, the people who rely on the state for the public services, whether it's their pension money, whether it's their rice in the PDS, whether it's a scholarship, they don't have a choice. So if you're in a village and you are entitled to get some rice at 2 rupees, you can only go to one PDS shop to get your rice or wheat. You can't go anywhere else. So every shop has 1,000 families allocated to it, and you can only go to that shop. Now, when you create a system that has no choice, then the supplier has bargaining power. The supplier knows that you can't go anywhere else. The supplier knows that if you say there's no stock, you can't go anywhere else. The supplier knows that if you give less amount, you can't go anywhere else. The supplier knows that if you mix stone in the rice, you can't go anywhere else. So once you have a person attached to only one shop or one outlet, then that's how corruption comes in, because that the supplier has bargaining power over the beneficiary. Same thing is true of his pension. If the pension is only available from one person, that person has power over him. What we are doing now, because it's an online ID system, that online ID can be verified anywhere. So let's take this case in Hyderabad, where we have, let's say, or East Godavari, where 100 PDS shops are supplying rice. All those shops are online. So now, using technology, I can make the entitlement of rice and wheat portable. That is, he can go to any of the shops to take his rice or wheat. And what does that do is that it creates competition among the fair price shops. Because a particular fair price shop is giving the person bad service, then that person can get up and go to another fair price shop. Similarly, we are creating a network of interoperable business correspondents to take your money out. And therefore, if you go to a particular business correspondent and he's giving you bad service, you can go to another BC. So by using technology, by putting ID on the cloud, by creating interoperability, you're creating mobility and portability of public services, which means that the bargaining power shifts from the supplier to the beneficiary, because he can go and take it from any BC or any PDS shop, and that changes the whole dynamic. So it's fundamentally changing the relationship of the individual with the state by empowering him to have access to public services or money anywhere. And that is how the corruption factor will come down, because now he can go, if somebody is giving him bad treatment, he can go somewhere else. So that's why it's very important to understand the strategic transformational possibilities that we have here. On one hand, it acts as a social inclusion project by giving people an ID in the world's largest social inclusion project. On the other hand, it makes government spending more efficient, more equitable, more effective, which is very, very important as we look at how we make our money, use the government money optimally. And finally, by empowering the resident to be able to go anywhere to get his service, you make his transactions with the state much more empowering, much more in his favor, and therefore really giving him freedom that he deserves. Thank you very much.